Hey there, welcome to episode 22 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. Today, I'm recording this on the very late evening of April 24th, 2024. It's a Wednesday night here in the greater Vegas area. Episode 22 already. Wonderful. Today, we are going to talk about reviewing reviews and reviewers. By the way, if you are not familiar with what FFS is, we talk about what works, what doesn't, and what we can do about it. If you're not familiar with the FFS abbreviation, you need to know more Irish people. Reviews have always been a thing, often contentious for any of a number of reasons, from fake to paid for to fraught with agenda and more. What is wrong with reviews? Or is it what is wrong with reviewers? Or maybe it's actually what's wrong with people reading them. Maybe we have some things to think about. Let's discuss. First of all, I hope you are finding this audio program wherever you find your audio programs, your podcasts, and that where you have found this one, they show the show notes, the episode description. In those show notes, you will find a links section. Very rarely is this laid out nicely. Hopefully you're able to find it. Fear not, the ffstalk.com website coming soon. A link directly to episodes on the website will be added to the episode descriptions of the entire catalog. So you will always be able to find these even in the past. First, the usual, buy Dan a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo if you are interested in finding where the latest episodes, audio programs, GitHub projects, etc. may be found. I use the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, DANHUGO profile to point to those. It's a free form, unlike a link tree or similar. It's a free form HTML page with links and so on. I also have a collection of links to some of my more frequently brewed coffee beans. If you're curious, you're under no obligation to spend any money to find this information, but if you want to, you can. Same goes for ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo, coffee.com/Dan Hugo. Shameless self-promotion. You don't need to spend money, but you can if you want. A quick Wikipedia entry on the Net Promoter Score. You've all seen this. How likely are you to refer this product or service or whatever to a friend, family member, colleague? Usually from 0, sometimes from 1 to 10, and give us a score. The Net Promoter Score. The promoter and the detractor. The promoter is usually like 8, 9, 10. The detractor is usually 0, 1, 2, 3, say. And in the middle, it says it in the article. It's usually those don't matter. So you take the promoter minus the detractor. The terminology doesn't really matter. In fact, the hard scoring doesn't really matter. Whether you start with 7 or 8 as a promoter, 8, 9, 10, 7, 8, 9, 10. Detractor could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have a 0, you can avoid a 0. The bottom line is how the data you collect impacts what you're trying to accomplish, your key performance indicator, perhaps. So the net promoter is promoter minus detractor as a percentage of total submissions, and that gives you how good you're doing. If you did a net detractor score, it'd be how bad you're doing. And these are nice, and I'm going to talk about it more, but these are nice because it's one question, and you do get a lot of value out of it with some caveats, which we'll talk about briefly. The worst product I've ever reviewed. Now, I'm not going to talk about Marcus Brownlee, other than referring to this video and the follow-on. The worst product I've ever reviewed for now was Marcus Brownlee reviewing the Humane, I believe it's Humane Technologies, but maybe it's just Humane. What is it called? It's not the badge. Now I got to look it up. It's the AI brooch, the AI Humane Tech, humanetech.com. Nope, that's not it. So it sticks to your shirt It's another connected device, and it's like $800 plus a substantial, geez, if I could type, substantial subscription fee on top of that. So you end up spending a lot of money. So of course and of course during a show I can't find the darn thing, Humane AI, the pin. They just call it a pin, of course. The Humane AI pin. I'm not going to link to their site. If you go to the YouTube review, because it's Humane, hu-ma.ne. I'm not going to link to that. You can find it if you want to spend $800. The point, though, Marcus Brownlee is a very well-known, internet famous reviewer, a tech aficionado. He recently added a separate vehicle channel so he can do car reviews because he likes cars. But he got to start doing a lot of phone reviews. He started doing technology and so on. And he's very thorough. He has developed a credibility streak. So he's a credible reviewer. He is fair. He is known for being fair and transparent. He is very transparent when it comes to sponsors, who's paying what. If there's a sponsor for a thing, he doesn't say, they're sponsoring and I'm reviewing. If he does, he's very clear about it. I don't like hover over his channel and consume every single thing, but I've watched several of his reviews over the years. He's very transparent, very credible, very human. He injects a bit of sincerity and honesty, so you can tell there is some subjectivity, but he's fairly objective because he's comparing a particular review in a general product segment, right? Tech, and then it could be cell phone, or it could be earbuds, or it could be car. But he's comparing at any given time one sometimes brand new product, pre-release, etc., with other products that are very similar. So his ability to offer a legitimate comparison that is fairly subjective. I do mean fairly as in fair, fairly subjective, but also with a human factor of fairly objective, with a human factor of subjectivity. In other words, he does know what he's talking about, but he's still a normal person giving a review. Because this is his business, this is his job, it behooves him to be fair and honest and to work for his audience, which I believe he does. I believe it. So he presented the worst product review ever for now. I just paraphrased that title. So you can watch that video. I found it to be fair and reasonable. I was not in the market to purchase a human AI pin, but it was interesting to see what he had to say. It was interesting to a lot of people. And so he individually, one person, one guy, was accused of destroying Humane, which didn't actually happen. But do bad reviews kill companies? Was a response video that Marcus Brownlee created in response, like very quickly, right after he published that first review, an onslaught, a barrage of people accusing him of taking down the company with one bad review. The interesting thing was that his review was one of many that had several similar points raised as to shortcomings and so on, but most of them were fair in saying this is a version 1 product. It's a new product space. It's a new market segment. It's a device that really is difficult to compare with other devices. So it's kind of a new product category. Some things it did right, some things it did wrong. So he was not the only one, but he responded because he was accused as though he was the only one. I think he actually points it out. Someone said, with great reach, they were riffing on Spider-Man, with great reach or great subscription numbers, or comes great responsibility, and you can't destroy companies with your reviews. So I think if you watch the follow-up video, he's pretty straightforward. He did exactly what he does for all of his reviews, and editorial and human subjective bias is always going to be apparent. If he underscores it, if he makes it fairly clear, and hey, I didn't like this product, but there were still some good things about it. So as long as you can see it, as long as it's not being tucked away behind an agenda of some sort, I think it's fair. He's a human being. He's a person. He's offering his reviews, and he's offering that review to his audience as a service to them, not with an agenda pro or anti company or product. So if you start off by saying, however this product works, whatever it does, whatever it doesn't do, I'm going to tell it like it is to my audience. That is your responsibility. It is not your responsibility to sugarcoat or protect. It's to be honest. Because some people make buying decisions based on what you have to say. A company that releases a bad product, hopefully and he goes into this too, will hopefully learn from what the reviewers say. By the way, this is why you get your reviewers sample units first. And then you say, hey, let's have an embargo. Don't publish a review. Give us some feedback. We'll tackle, you're our beta team, our co-creation beta team. You're the advocate for the customer. You're going to offer us customer feedback, but you have a lot more insight because of your experience with our competitors or the products that we're trying to replace, etc. So I personally blame Humane. And this happened with Framework, which is doing some very cool things. They sent a pre-release unit for review. So the reviewer was writing like, this didn't work. And then their response was, oh, it worked in the final, but you reviewed a pre-release device. Well, luckily, when you have a small population of professional reviewers, you can not do that. So reviews are a tricky business, but I believe the Marcus Brownlee case with the Humane AI pin is a really interesting look. So this is all, I'm not really going to focus on this too much. You can watch those videos if you want. It's very interesting. A myriad of Humane AI pin reviews out there, mostly, I'm not going to say negative, like unduly negative, but they point out some things that didn't work. I will point out at this point that I did work at Apple in the Newton group. For any of you who were around for those days, you want to talk about negative reviews. And Apple did okay. They survived. But the original Newton Message Pad 100, which I did own before it was stolen in a satchel in my car. Hate that guy, whoever it was. The Message Pad 100 was a cool idea that did not work. It simply didn't work often enough or well enough to justify calling it a working product. It was a cool idea, very poorly implemented, but that's how the Newton product line began. Eventually it was put out to pasture and the iPhone came about and arguably took the best parts of the Newton. There are a couple things that would have been cool if they included, but that's the deal. You take product reviews and you make your product better. Now, the Net Promoter Score I mentioned, you see it all the time. It's arguably one of the most popular and most useful if you are willing to accept a caveat. Satisfaction over quality, Business Insider article, customer satisfaction surveys, encourage annoying ratings. So you'll see these everywhere, and you're starting to see them out in the real world. I've seen this at airports. I've seen it where pedestrian foot traffic is going from point A to point B. How was your journey? How was your experience, et cetera? And they'll have a smiley face, so they'll have 5 buttons, score of equivalent to what? 0, 3, 7, 9, 10 or something. So you want to get some sort of a range compacted down into 5 values. They'll put a smiley face and a frown or whatever. Tell us how we're doing. The challenge here, and I will get into that, this is the crux of today's episode. The challenge is you are asking one person to tell in one value how their experience was. The product may be good or bad. Their experience on this one occasion, scored on on a whatever arbitrary emoji scale, with no qualifications, no specificity. Just tell us what you think. The Net Promoter Score suffers from something similar with the caveat, the magic, and we're getting to the entire Net Promoter Score section. So hang on, but the take home, the pivot on which the value rests. How likely are you to recommend this to someone else? That is not always apparent in the on the fly interrupting your airport marathon through the airport. Tell us how was your experience flying into our airport? I've seen those, and it's kind of weird, but I very rarely submit a rating on those because it's usually fine. I mean, the baseline for that is I am here, I'm in a new city, didn't crash, was plus or minus an hour scheduled time, etc. So, but yeah, you're going to see these more and more, but they are very often experiential. So they're not really quality, they're satisfaction. Are you happy right now? That doesn't help improve product. It's more of an indication of whether the product is maintaining, improving, or not improving as far as what the customer is experiencing. So if you were selling water, bottled water, which is common here in Vegas on the Strip, as summer approaches, there are people who sell you a bottle of water for $1, $2, $5, whatever it is. If you bought that water and then you were offered this survey, how do you feel now that you've bought this water? You may feel better or worse. And over time, on any given day, you could say, well, that person was selling the water there and people felt better. And if they were over there, and if it was that person, if they felt worse, you can start seeing some trends. But you're not determining, especially if they didn't drink the water yet, you're not determining anything about the quality of the product, only the circumstance of the experience. So you can correlate against your personnel, the venue, the environment, the conditions, but that's not really an indication of the quality. It's an indication of the circumstance. So the experience and satisfaction versus the quality of your offerings. Something to think about. Finally, I would like to reference, we're not sponsored in any way by this, but this was one of my favorite. I haven't looked forever because I really haven't been in the market for cameras, but this was one of my favorite places to look for camera reviews. It's still there. imaging-resource.com. Fabulous, seemingly objective. They used to take the same pictures. I'm sure they've taken different pictures more recently. They had the same test images, the same model. So you had the same general skin and hair, lighting outside, natural lighting, studio lighting, all this. They had all this whole menu of shots that they would take, not identical, but certainly very similar. And they would take a very objective view, very objective examination of all the different images and the different ambient lighting and subject colors and sharpness and just every aspect. It boggles the mind. It's mind-boggling. So check out that website. And if you're in the market for a camera, take a look, see what you think. In my opinion, it's a camera site done right. Sort of the not the ultimate, not perfect, but when you're talking about objective reviews, you can compare one camera to another on that site because they've gone to the lengths they have. And I haven't checked recently, but when I was in the market for cameras and whatnot over the years, you could compare camera A, camera B, something from Nikon, something from Canon, something from Sony. Oh, look, he took the same picture with all three cameras. Let's compare. Things like this. So it was there's some subjectivity. There's a sort of an article written summarizing and going over the good, the bad, and whatnot. So, but it's really well done. It's a level of detail that would be difficult for the casual person to maintain unless you are truly passionate about the tools, the products, etc. So about that Net Promoter Score, it is often described as the most important survey question you can ask customers or clients or just about anyone. And it's up for debate. And again, like I said, the range of numbers and so on is something you should tailor. The wording, do you want to recommend it to colleagues, to friends, family, one or more of those groups, other groups, etc. The referral part is important. There are many more signals to capture in general. Like I said, you can capture very specific things about the quality of the item, the quality of the service, the quality of the employee, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how clean were your utensils in our restaurant today? Things like this. So you can be very specific. But if you can only ask one question, there is unmistakable value in the Net Promoter Score. And I think that's fairly, universally agreed upon, not emphatically. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I think you get at least a 7 or an 8 on how likely people are to refer you to the Net Promoter Score to use for your, anyway, you get it. So you can really get some useful data in the one question, so long as you understand the caveat. You are recommending the recommendation of the thing in question to what is probably a trusted, cared about, loved, etc. person. You want that person to continue trusting and valuing your opinions and reviews and your referrals and so on. So you subconsciously, perhaps, or consciously, in your calculation, assume that, well, if I recommend or refer someone to this, and I'm comfortable doing that, then I'm hoping that they'll have a similar good experience and they will continue to value my opinions. So if I did not like it, if I did not like the food, the hotel room, the flight, the book, I'm not going to refer someone else. I'm not going to recommend it to a person that I want to continue trusting my opinions, because they're not going to like it. I didn't like it. They're not going to like it. If I tell them I liked it, if I recommend it to them, they're going to think I'm an idiot. So you cannot in good conscience promote the item. You'll give it a lower score. You might even give it the detractor score. And the take home for the producer, the company, the cook, whomever, is, hey, why are we getting a lot of detractor scores? What's going on? Doesn't say anything about why. There's nothing in there about the color, the shape, the size, the hot, the cold, the sharp, the dull, the tasty, the untasty, flavorless. There's really not a lot of detail. It's really about customer satisfaction. So it's an indicator. Will someone put their own personal reputation on the line to recommend your product or service to someone else whose opinion that matters to them? So that's valuable, but you have to keep in mind that it's not specific. You give up that for the sake of ease. If you're liberal with your examinations, a lot of our modern day social media signals. So what I'm saying is that you have to believe what I'm telling you, and you have to also assume that there are other signals at play here, but just go with it. A lot of our modern day social media signals, like likes, shares, subscribes, comments, stars, anything that has your identity, your real or otherwise identity, so that they can associate one rating for one thing with your other rating for another thing. They know it's one entity, person, or whatever. And that matters a lot. So they can start to see aggregates of what one of their users, one person, one account, one robot, whatever, it all kind of culminates into a form of net promoter scoring, where you are now recommending, or not, the thing to anyone who consumes your submission. So when you follow someone, or when they follow you, or vice versa, both, you have a network, right? So your network of followers, first degree, second degree, when you like someone, something, some restaurant, some singer, some book, what happens in your Facebook or even LinkedIn or anywhere? Either they will say, so-and-so liked this, or they'll highlight like 1 million people liked it, including 5 people you know. So they're telling you some people that you know took the time to recommend this to you. That may or may not be explicitly true, but that's the implication of these signals and how they're gathered. So now you can actually build up a recommendation network based on the likes, and then you use a signal like a subscriber. Oh, you gained a subscriber. That is a form of, we'll say, a potential promoter, right? So a potential promoter as a subscriber. Now, you don't even have to be a subscriber for this to matter, but being a subscriber boosts your signal, perhaps, depending on how they've implemented their algorithm. So as a subscriber to a YouTube channel, for example, the channel becomes scored differently, we'll say, has a certain value. So the value goes up for every subscriber. Whenever you view a video, that's a signal. Whenever you like a video, that is another signal, a more overt signal. If the recommended page is being constructed based on what you watch, that's useful. If it's also being constructed based on what other people who liked other videos like videos that you like, right? Does that make sense? Like, if you like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream, and someone else likes chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate chip mint, the odds are you're going to get recommended chocolate chip mint. So, what are the chances that you'll recommend chocolate chip mint to your friends? Well, you liked it. Other people like similar things. You may be subscribed to the same channels. You will become someone to whom I would recommend those things. Similar score. So these are all sort of variations on a theme. I'm totally oversimplifying the way these classifying and scoring systems could work. But at the end of the day, that's pretty close approximation. You're essentially recommending to others whenever you like. And in fact, the PageRank scoring, which is a thing of the past, Google has admitted that time and time again. It's no longer that simple. But PageRank was literally a measurement of if someone referenced your website, your page, from their page, they are very clearly recommending your page to someone reading their page. So if they, in the grand scheme of Google PageRank of everything, and again, they don't really do this like this anymore, but in the early days, you can read the paper on it, PageRank and MapReduce, the way that they accomplish this. If you take all of the web pages and you figure out how many have incoming links and how many have outgoing, and the page rank is, this page has a lot of incoming links, other pages linking to it, and those pages are valuable because they have other pages linking to them. And so you would end up with some sort of a net promoter score from that, essentially. They've gotten far more complicated on content quality and utility, trying to do away with spammy pages, failing miserably, but a very similar idea. How do you show things, references to things, restaurants, food recommendations, movie recommendations, etc.? How do you present those to people? You find out what people would recommend to them, and you monetize and automate and machinate all of that. So the Net Promoter Score, very simple. It's a starting point. You can get very complicated, but would you recommend this explicitly or implicitly? Would you overtly say, hey, you should listen to this thing? Or would you more passively like it or put 4 stars on it on a Yelp review? And, I'm being followed by somebody that I know. They'll see, Dan just gave 4 stars to this restaurant or music or book. You want to check it out. You can go to Goodreads. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Yelp. You can go to Google Local. You can go to IMDb, which I will be talking about some of these. That's what it comes down to. So who are you speaking to? If you add your thoughts in any form to any discussion, who is your intended audience? Who do you think is going to read what you have to say? A YouTube comment, an Amazon review, etc. Are you trying to help your audience make good decisions? So in reviewing, and YouTube comments are a form of review. That's how they treat them. Engagement, interaction. Those are scored. They're a signal about the content. So when you comment, you interact, you engage. It's part of the math. Are you trying to be mean? Are you trolling? Are you trying to offend people? Are you trying to provide additional information? Are you trying to answer a question from the content creator? Are they, add a comment below, tell me what you think, give me an idea, give me a suggestion, etc. So sometimes it's a review and sometimes it's merely a response, but the responses are sort of like reviews, sort of, in the big picture. So are you trying to be helpful and participate in a community of sorts around a particular thing, whether it's a YouTube video or a Amazon product or a Goodreads book or a Yelp restaurant? Or are you trying to be mean? Are you trying to build credibility? Throwing your clout around? If you're creating an actual review for a restaurant, retail store, product, service, movie, are you sharing your opinion with anyone to consume? Are you hoping to steer your community toward or away from that thing? Did that come out right? Are you sharing your opinion for anyone to consume? Yes. So what you're saying is, here's what I think of this thing. Here's what I think of this movie, this restaurant. Do with it what you will. I'm giving it 4 stars. Are you trying to make someone? Are you trying to steer them into a decision? So are you passively saying, I liked this restaurant, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I like this book, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Or are you trying to say, I didn't like this book, you shouldn't read it, I'm going to give it 1 star. I like this book a lot and you should read it, 5 stars, whatever, right? So are you trying to influence? Or are you merely adding to a big picture? Something to think about. Maybe you're trying to send a message to the maker of the thing, the author, the publisher, the restaurant owner, the chef, the director, the actor. I know I'm going to give them a 1-star review and rant negative comments. You can do it on Twitter, you can do it on Yelp, you can do it on Facebook, anywhere you want. Where you are sharing your thoughts matters, of course. And the motivation can vary with your audience. It can vary with what the thing is you're reviewing or commenting upon. It can vary with the platform. There are places where you may want to write a review. You may explicitly write a review of something, but you may also in some places be able to comment on someone else's review. So that can change your tone. You can be oddly specific about what they had to say, kind of troll them, etc. So who do you expect to be reading? And really as sort of a corollary, what impact do you expect to have by writing a review? Now, the question, sort of the casual question is, why are you taking the time to do this, right? You could have a specific reason that varies. The camera guy, imaging resource, they have advertisements on the sites. I'm sure they get pre-release and content creator / reviewer, early access and all that. And if you are a passionate consumer yourself of the technology, the products, the services, the books, the movies, etc., then this puts you on the in crowd and it's very exciting. It's fun. It's cool. I can see that. Maybe you can too. If I was writing reviews of computer equipment like keyboards or something, and I had a stack of keyboards in here, I would want to write reviews for keyboards, give honest reviews. I would get more keyboards. So my motivation would be, I enjoy finding better and better keyboards or worse and worse keyboards, etc. And so who am I speaking to? Anyone who's curious about keyboards. I have access to keyboards early. I get to use them. I will give my honest review. You'll often hear people who are reviewing professionally that want to keep doing it and maintain their credibility. They'll say, I was not paid for this. Or sometimes they'll say, they have sponsored this review, but they had no say in it. I did not have to submit the review to them prior, etc. So the fact that there is a professional reviewer receiving compensation, they may say, here's our brand new product. It's pre-release. You're getting it 2 weeks early. Live on it for 2 weeks. Give an honest review. We'll watch it with everyone else. That's pretty reasonable. You say that up front. You're transparent about it. You are doing this on behalf of the customer, the consumer, the people watching or listening to you, the person or the company that recognizes that credibility, that standard, contributes to that and says, here, hit us with your best shot. If they really believe in their own product, they want you to give that feedback. I don't know what Humane AI, Humane Pin. I don't know if they were prepared for the onslaught, but something tells me they kind of felt like there'd be more of a wow than a wah. So civilian or professional reviewer, which one are you listening to? Which one are you? A professional reviewer is likely building their credibility, like I said, with their audience, and so is behaving as their advocate, grading products or services from their perspective. This is important because I'm not interested in pleasing. If I write a restaurant review and I know the restaurant, first of all, if I know the restaurant owner and I'm going to write a negative review, I'm going to tell them first. I'm going to say, hey, your stuff's normally really good, but today I had the goulash and it tasted like dishwater. What happened? And then they might say, oh my God, thanks for telling me that we had a big problem. Okay. So the outlier is something you can account for and you say, oh, okay, this would have been bad. It's possible that some customers saw that, tasted it. That can happen. It can happen out there. If you take your reputation as a professional reviewer and you call that out, later someone's going to say, well, that was just that one time. Or the owner of the establishment might chime in if they can and say, as we discussed, right? So there's a certain level of professionalism in being a professional reviewer that makes for a more credible review that can account for outliers. Now, suppose Marcus, and I'm not going to go into this too much, but Marcus gets the pin, does his review, and says, this thing is just nuts. It's like, doesn't work. And then he contacts the company or contacts his peers, and then probably his peers first, and they say, oh, it worked great for me. They'll say, oh, what's going on here? Then he doesn't release an outlier review that's ridiculous. He will find some of the similar problems that others have had, and he's talked about this, how they kind of compare notes a little bit, because at the end of the day, they want their audience, they want the consumers of these products to come away with a good, honest impression so that the service goes to their audience. Know your customer, right? So if we were going to review the reviewers, you would say, okay, they all seem pretty fair. They all found similar good and bad things. One person found a particularly weird thing. And then, a week or two later, people say, oh yeah, that was weird. That was an unusual circumstance. So the outlier is sometimes, if you couch it as, well, this was weird. We found a weird thing. That's reasonable. In my soup example, I got the goulash, but it tasted like, and it sounded like dishwater. This is very weird. And then you do a follow-up and you say, we got back in touch and we did, and this is what happened, and totally understand. So if you are responsible for your audience and what they come away with, and you follow up and you keep them informed, if you are their advocate and you have that credibility, you can do those things. You might get dinged for it here and there, but it's essentially, if something goes weird, there will be why did that go weird? Not the reaction that we saw with this pin. I think people that don't normally consume his reviews probably called him out because he is very high profile in the tech arena, but obviously not in that product class because it's a new product class. So that's kind of interesting. Now, a civilian influencer. This is a person who has a YouTube account, has a Instagram account. They've built up an audience. Advertisers will say, hey, why don't you promote my clothing in your content? Why don't you promote my food item? Can you announce things? Sometimes, so the paid placement, sometimes it's an actual advertisement. Sometimes the platform supports that. So you can do Instagram ads, but you can do influencer advertising. So you're mentioning a product, you're hyping a product. It's part of the monetization scheme. Got to pay your bills. So civilian influencers may give subjective experiential reviews more than completely objective, consistent reviews. In other words, subjective reviews by influencers may be, I had a really good time at this restaurant. They picked up our tab. Here's some video of us tasting the food. Okay. That's not going into the details. That's not looking in the kitchen. Some do actually. But you're not doing a real restaurant review that's done by a consistent food taster that reviews multiple restaurants and gives a consistent scoring and a rundown and looks for certain things. You're giving that subjective experiential review or mention or product placement. And so you're trading your credibility with your audience for this experiential review, which may not have as much specificity as the review that's more objective, coming from a professional reviewer, especially if they review product segments frequently, cars, movies, books, etc. Right? So if they have a passion, they've built an audience on their reviews and their insights, you would come to expect a more objective review with more specific pros and cons or a scoring system or something that you can compare directly. Imaging resource, great example. If you are looking at an influencer, a foodie, they will typically have a certain passion, but they're comparing how was it today, and you really can't directly compare that experience that they're imparting, that they're sharing with you, with a similar experience at a different place or a different product or different service. You really can't. It's not apples and apples. So that's something to be aware of, that the fan is following leads to product promotion opportunities, and or following of subjects, subjective. Maybe objective reviews and experiences may feed back on itself. So in other words, So I just read that from my notes here. The fan following, that is, you've built up this fan base, leads to these reviews. And they may or may not be structured. They may or not be completely objective. They may be subjective. And these feedback on themselves. So if you're very excited, you offer a attractive, as in people really want to see it, they share it with their friends, YouTube video or Instagram clip. So you've developed this following. You are known for offering good experiential reviews. People tend to visit the company, the product, they buy the product, they visit the restaurant, etc. Then there's this like, oh, your influencer reach is beneficial to us. We will give you more money. And so it kind of feeds back on itself. That was my intent of what I wrote there. So if you develop this following based on your reviews, let's be honest, you don't want to be too negative. So you're really going to stick with positive experiential reviews. Occasionally you have to be honest, but if you don't have a structure to your review, then if you say, well, this food wasn't as good as what? If you're a pizza reviewer, if you go to pizza restaurants and you review pizza, and you're going to say this pizza is S-class, because you're going to compare it with all the pizza places you visited. So anyone who's a fan can say, oh, okay, that fits into this big picture of pizza that you've been filling in. But if you just give positive experiential reviews, the net impact will be what it is. I mean, they're both valuable, but you have to be aware that you are not getting a complete consumer quality review from an influencer. You're probably getting a review of the experience on that day in that circumstance. Also useful, but it's important to know the difference. And as I write right here, getting ahead of myself, sometimes there is a very clear line. Other times, especially when a content creator influencer turns a passion or intense interest into a more structured reviewer reputation, we may find ourselves blending the two into one notion of reviewer. So there's a reviewer, what's his name? Steve, I think, Gamer Nexus. He's intensely detailed. He has a personal interest in doing reviews well, getting consistent indicators of good and bad products, whether they work or don't work, and how well or how not well. He rather famously called out Linus Tech Tips for some of their practices of their reviews. LTT has a bigger audience, so he was like, hey, if you're going to give the wrong information, you're going to mislead people. And that undoes the utility of what everybody is doing in this whole area. You know, if reviews become tainted with unreliable, inaccurate, that affects everybody. There's probably some truth to that. So he didn't set out to be, like, he didn't go to school to be a professional gamer hardware reviewer. It's a passion of his that he turned into a profession. The same can be said of foodies, of photographers, etc. The question is, do you turn the passion into a business, and you deep dive, you come up with a structure, you discuss with your peers, you offer high value reviews that are comparable with other reviews across a standard set of metrics, perhaps? Do you look at TDP, total design power? Do you compare TDP of different motherboards and chipsets and peripherals and so on across? And do you examine how TDP is calculated, as Steve from Gamers Nexus has? Or do you just go, oh, it's it's whatever the value is. You don't really think about that because you're concerned with this product, not where it stacks up with others. So I think there's a spectrum, there's a range, the civilian to professional spectrum. And I think if you build a professional reviewer reputation and a platform and a staff of people, or a methodology, or the tools, and you have access to the hardware and the measurement devices, or whatever it is, right? Whatever you're focused on. If you offer consistent reviews that are, I'll say, technical, not that you don't have to go to get a PhD in a topic, but if you do the work, as they say, imaging resource guy, I'm a professional photographer. I take pictures and review the cameras as a professional photographer would. And so you're receiving that information, which, by the way, is interesting if you are looking for, I just want a camera to carry around in my pocket when I go to Hawaii. Do I need a professional photographer's inputs? No, but you can use that as some of your own signaling. So you know the context, you know the goal of that person. If you get a collection of images from Flickr, for example, which offers a way to search for photos taken by a particular camera, you might say, oh, those all look good. You find pictures in Hawaii. Oh, I can expect something like that from that camera. Those are experiential photos. This is how this photo worked out on that time. Why am I talking about this? Because Marcus Brownlee did the professional reviewer take, and it was treated as if he was piling on like maybe an influencer trying to be negative. I think it was far more of a professional review being honest than a negative review trying for clout, trying to troll, trying to be mean. Going negative is not the mark of a professional. Going honest is. And by the way, I'll take a brief break here and say that when I was in Silicon Valley in about somewhere in like 2008, had a startup that we called Valid Rate that I'm going to talk about briefly towards the end of today's episode. Super relevant, hence my opinions here. So a couple of examples to think about. Back in the day, cathode ray tubes, CRTs, were the thing. Everybody had one, whether it was a television or a computer monitor. And there was a time when websites, when they were popular, you could put up a website, you put up some photos of your products, like a catalog, and you say, hey, buy this top, this pants, these shoes, accessories. So clothing, shoes, accessories, etc. These were big business, purchased online. Here's the problem. You may remember this from the NTSC, NTSC? No. What is it? Yeah. Never the same color twice. NTSC standard monitor, or PAL if you're in Europe, or SICAM if you're in France. NTSC video had a very small color space. So the color you saw on your screen was not necessarily anywhere near it might be red-ish. Computer monitors were better. They had a larger color gamut, and you could probably, with the quality of the DACs, the digital to analog converter, you can convert 8-bit channel data to some very nice red, green, and blue colors. And you could have nice blacks. So you get a nice dark black, you'd get a nice red and a nice green, a nice blue, etc. And so the colors on the screen would be pretty close. They'd be closer than on an NTSC broadcast television signal. However, and here's the fun part, I used to work at Supermac. Part of their business, a non-trivial part of it, was color calibration and pre-press workflow for publishing professionals. So when you were making your catalog, when you were taking your artwork, your photos, your copy, you were laying out your pages for your catalogs, or you're building website content, but definitely for print. So publishing a print, glossy, full color full bleed separations and all this stuff. You want the color that people see to be what you want it to be. And in the pigment world, CMYK conversion is a known thing. It used to take a while, but getting it right is not so bad. And now it's trivial. So the Supermac workflow, for example, you'd have a nice monitor, 23-inch probably at the time, a nice flat monitor, CRT. You'd have a puck. You'd stick it on the front. You'd calibrate the color. You'd have an ambient light controlled viewing booth. So you'd set the color temperature around you with a gray neutral background. So you'd put a 5K ambient light, for example. You'd calibrate your monitor. You would know what you're looking at. You could judge the color on the screen. That is exactly what it's supposed to be. You could use color references like Pantone. You could get reference colors, and if you knew your product color, specific colors, you could compare them. Then you could map those to process colors for printing, and you'd have color profiles for your entire workflow. So you would know your color profile for your monitor, for your camera, for your dye sub printer, perhaps. You'd output print that would look exactly like it's going to look when it goes to the mass printing at the printing press before it goes into newspaper inserts, to bulk mailing, etc. So getting those colors right was important. Now, everybody and their friend has a CRT on their desk or in their bedroom or in their dorm room or whatever, and they are thinking about buying that pair of pants or that top, that shirt, that tie to match the other clothes they have. They look on their computer screen, which is not calibrated, and they're in a room with a 4300 K light, or whatever their ambient light is, whatever their viewing conditions are, whatever their monitor is calibrated to, if it's calibrated at all, and it probably isn't. And so their package would arrive, and they're like, this doesn't look like what it did on the screen. So back in the day, and LCDs have done a lot to change this, because LCDs have color gels, or LCDs do, liquid crystal displays, with super twist or TFT, thin film transistor control circuitry per pixel, so you can actually control through a gel, essentially a gel, so you know exactly what the red value is. So you have a lot better control over the color of the light coming out of the monitor. You can't control the ambient light, but you can hope for the best. But at the end of the day, you end up with a better match. But back in those days, the mid 2005, 2006, no, 2000, when did I work at Supermac? I worked at Supermac in 1993. I don't know if I said 2008. 1993. Oh, the valid rate was 2008. Sorry. So in 1993, the mid 90s, the internet was becoming a thing. I worked at Supermac. Print catalogs were still a thing, but the internet was starting to catch on. People started to say, hey, this doesn't match. And so there was a spike in returns. Color doesn't match. The number one reason for returns. Isn't that crazy? So the review was very, it was qualitative in a sense, but it was very quantitative, because people were noticing qualitatively the color is off, but quantitatively the color was off. The color of the product, the top, the tie, the shoes, the bag, whatever, the color on screen was not matched explicitly to the color of the product. So for all the work that was done in the print media workflow, like I've described, that was not happening for the CRT monitor consumer crowd. So they were disappointed and frustrated. They would return their products. So when I was in the LCD business in 2001 at Philips Displays, talking about these things, that was the number one thing. Number one reason for people returning products: color not matching. So LCDs have done a lot to change that. And so as a form of review, you had a very honest take that was reasonably accurate. This doesn't match the thing that you showed me on the screen. Take it back. Give me my money back. Okay. So ironically, that is the most defensible negative review you can find. Here is actual mismatch. You can demonstrate it. Here it is. Value that I saw on the screen was this. Value of actual product, if we were to compare standard colors, Pantone, etc., different. And I'm buying based on it matching my other clothes. Case closed. Other clothing. Case closed. There you go. If anything, even though there was a problem, it would be great if that was the structure of reviews today, if it was so explicit and provable. Food and restaurant reviews are typically experiential. Rarely do we see a foodie, especially on Instagram, which is all about the look of the food, the video, the cheese stretch, the sizzle, assessing authenticity, nature of ingredients, cleanliness of the kitchen, etc. They're usually not doing that. So it's really about what they get at the table, what's on the plate, what's in the popcorn bucket, whatever. Right? So you are seeing the experience that time. I was a food truck person. I've talked about this before, and I will again, I'm sure. I used to go to food truck events. I would take a picture of the food trucks and the crowd. So I had a pretty standard thing. But I would take pictures of the food. I was very attentive. Not if it came with a fork already stuck in it, I would leave it. But if the utensils were separate, I would leave the utensils out. I would remove a cover. I would open the clamshell. I would unwrap so that it was visible, but not falling apart, so it didn't lose its shape or look. And I would take a picture close in from table, almost like a low eye level. Like if I'm at a high top, I'm taking the camera is at the eyeball level of a person you can see over the top of the table. That's arguably me. The idea was you can see the sesame seed, you can see the sauce bubbling, you can see the steam coming off it. See, these all happen now and then. So you get a sense of the food and the way it looks untouched. And I took a few pictures and make sure the lighting is good. Why? Because the picture was the language of appreciation of the product. And I didn't post photos of food that didn't taste good or didn't look good. Sandwiches and burritos, very difficult, very challenging. They tend to look like kind of a mess. One of my favorite food trucks would make sandwiches, and I'm like, I really can't take a good picture of a sandwich. A cross-section of a sandwich doesn't always look great. It's tricky. I got a couple. But the fact is, food and restaurant reviews are very often by a casual person, by a foodie, an influencer. They're all about the experience. They're all about the picture that they can take at that time. So it's important to know that, because foodies don't have to invest any time. They go and take a picture. If they're going to a restaurant and they want to take a picture, they do it. They don't have to make arrangements. They don't have to write a review, a formal review. They have no real reputation to protect. If the food is not good, they just don't post the picture. If they go to a restaurant and the food is not good and they're supposed to review it, you have to present a negative review. And that's the way the job works. And that's very different. And then you run into the Marcus Brownlee problem. Yelp, Google Local, similar platforms make it reasonably easy for one person to write a rating. 1 to 5 stars is the usual. Usually about a business or place, and have those reviews appear together. That is, I can write a review if I'm a restaurant reviewer for a newspaper, which is now a newspaper website of some sort. I might write my review and it's in my column section. It's attached to my byline and you will see my reviews. But if you write a review for Yelp, your review is shown next to 50 or 100 other reviews. Your 1 through 5 star rating is opaque, and I'll get to what that means in a moment. And the star rating is usually averaged together. So you're averaging an arbitrary 1 through 5 star rating, and that star rating can stay forever. I'm not necessarily looking at the finer points. I'm not constructing my star rating based on a consistent set of metrics. So all the reviews appear together, their stars are averaged, and that's it. Amazon and sometimes some other platforms. Amazon is doing something similar with their products. Usually it's if you buy them on or through Amazon, and they'll mark you as a verified purchaser. So I could write a review of an item available via Amazon, even though I didn't buy it there. But if I bought it there, I can be a verified purchaser. And then Amazon was averaging scores, and now they're doing an AI summarizer to indicate trends that in the sentiment analysis of the actual reviews. So you can still write an experiential review unstructured, but they're pulling out a little bit of structure. You know, people tend to think that the battery life is too short. People tend to think that the shoes fit according to the size. So they can summarize multiple inputs. And then they break down. So they give you an average star rating, but they also give you a, bar graph. Number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 stars. Yelp is doing something similar now, I think. So, okay, you're aggregating reviews and you're presenting them without specific structure. And in the case of Amazon, you're pulling some of that structure out through sentiment or word usage, large language model, or LLM, AI. So I'm not using a standard rubric, a standard set of metrics for analyzing and evaluating and assessing the quality of the sneaker or the book. I'm writing my own review and I'm giving a star system that I've conceived myself. Yelp is even worse because they tend to focus on restaurants there. So here's the problem. This is what I mean by opaque. and I've even done this. I'm going to knock a star off for fill in the blank. It's a 5-star product. I'm knocking 2 stars off because they didn't call me back. Well, if everyone gives 3 stars out of 5, and everyone says it's a 5-star product, but for different reasons they take off 2 stars, to the casual person, they're going to see a 3-star rating. They're not going to see the sentiment of the 5 stars, but for fill in the blank. The producer, the source of the problem, whether it's the service, the customer support, whatever it is, they could address those problems after the fact. Still a 5-star product. They've addressed the thing that cost them the 2 stars. But because those are opaque star ratings, there isn't a direct way to update that. This is foreshadowing for valid rate. So when you review something, and this is especially true on Yelp, when you give an experiential review and you have an opaque 1 through 5 star rating, where are those 5 stars coming from? They're coming from my experience. My experience on this one day. And on Yelp, this is all the time on Yelp. I went there with my boyfriend. I went there with my parents. I was having a birthday celebration. So there's a story. If I just popped in there to get a quick lunch and it took 10 minutes instead of 5, but the food was delicious, 5 stars. If I took my family there after my college graduation and the food took 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes, and they put onions on my mom's, and she's allergic to onions, 3 stars for ruining my graduation. You're like, wait a minute. Those were 2 little things, and you've just put through, you've knocked 2 stars off of the average forever. So the value of a star is absolutely subjective and essentially meaningless. It's coupled directly to the anecdote that indicates the experience that is the review. A structured review would say, well, I went on this day, the food was amazing, this one thing happened, this other thing happened. All in all, amazing food quality. The manager addressed those 2 things. It was all sorted at the end. We had a lovely, there would be much less passion, much more object, not perfect, but you can read reviews that are objective. They call out the problems and the solutions, and they give details. They have a standard metric. They order the similar menu items across restaurants, however they do it. A Yelp review could be anything, out of the blue. Could be the host or hostess was sick that day, so we didn't have somebody at the front. Well, I had to wait 20 minutes for my table, right? Just that one thing can start rippling through a very angry customer, and that can have serious impact, which I will get to in a moment for a valid rate. Same with Google Local. The fun part is that Google Local and Yelp, you can have reviews of the same thing with wildly different star ratings. So what does that tell you? Nothing. So the motivation to be a reviewer. Why do I want to take the time to write a review and publish it somewhere so that others will see it? I've already mentioned, as a professional reviewer, you need to maintain a certain level of credibility with your audience that you've developed. Sometimes professional reviewers were working for, CNET or ZD Labs. So they were part of Macworld or PC World or Computer Shopper. So they were in the print business. They were doing product reviews. They were doing actual laboratory testing of products for, to power these reviews with objective comparison data. And they spun off and formed a YouTube channel or a blog or wrote their own reviews and articles. So these are people that have built their experience, their platform on which they rest their comparisons for reviews, and they have a credibility standard that they want to maintain with their audience. So they are motivated to minimize or at least disclose and be transparent about personal or subjective bias. So if you're being sponsored by the company that makes the product, it's very important to disclose that. If you are sponsored in general, if you receive, if your tab is picked up by the restaurant that you're writing a review for, which is a no-no, by the way. I believe that most places that do restaurant reviews professionally, they even try to not have the reviewer be known. It's hard to do. You don't want to walk in and get different treatment. So you try to do the secret shopper method. You go in, you're just a normal customer. You got a notepad or whatever, however you're capturing the experience, but you're going to be that any man, any person, as a customer, see what happens. If you're an influencer, you bank on your notoriety. You're going to walk in and everybody's going to say, oh, it's that person. I don't want to call anybody out. It's that person. So they may get free food, or they may get a free this, a comp that, a discount, or hey, try this extra, or you're going to get the hotter sauce, or you're going to get the bigger order of fries, whatever it is. That may not even be obvious to the influencer, the person creating the content. It may just work out that way. And that's where you get people saying, I went there and it wasn't like that. Well, get yourself a camera and an Instagram account and 1 million followers. So you have to be clear. You have to be transparent. If you have a professional reputation and credibility to watch out for, you have to be clear about your entanglements, and especially if you're an advocate for the customer. If you're an advocate for the consumer, the client, the person that's going to be eating the food, wearing the sneakers, reading the book, you're representing them, so you can't be paid off. You really have to act as though you are them and be treated accordingly. Does that happen every time? No. Should? Yes. With platforms like Yelp, the experiential review tends to be anecdotal, the long story, the tale to tell. Let me explain why I'm knocking those 2 stars off. Often very personal, and is sometimes written specifically to lash out at a business owner in retaliation for a bad experience. I will admit to doing this now and then, but I haven't done it for a long time. I think the last time I did this, there was a medical facility that I lashed out at specifically. That one is utilitarian because other people might suffer in health. So I thought that was but Yelp is not a great place for medical hospital reviews. So, but I was really angry at the hospital, and they deserved that and more. But a casual restaurant, there's a restaurant location near me when they first opened many years ago. The bathroom did not have, it had like automatic flusher, but automatic paper towel maybe, and manual faucet sinks. So I said, hey, if it's a sandwich shop, you're eating with your hands, it'd be cool if you modified this so that it would, so that you didn't have to touch because you're eating with your hands, right? Ethiopian restaurant, same thing. You're eating with your hands. We have the technology. Make it so that you don't really have to touch anything in the bathroom. Everybody wins. And they, I think they responded directly to me in a private message or something. And I was like, I'm just suggesting you make your bathroom like 100% touchless. You're like 50%. You know what? Go for it. Do the extra one thing. Do the faucets, or whatever it was. Then I had a problem with them because I had been there several times, despite the bathroom situation, and they refused to take a credit card that I had used previously because I didn't have my ID on me. Now, total side note, if you look at your merchant agreement for most credit card companies, you are not required to show ID. The identification scam, even better, if you're going to write a check, you have to guarantee it with your credit card. That's not how that works. You have to read the merchant accounts and all that, which I've done. So I said, yeah, you didn't sign the back of the card? That is not for comparing a signature. That is signing the card is accepting the terms of the use of the card, right? Read those merchant agreements. So I said, show me your merchant agreement where it says I have to present identification. Credit card companies don't want you to do that because it makes it more difficult to use their product to make the purchase. Like, we know who this is. If you have a problem, phone it in. We'll deal with the credit card fraud, but you let them use that plastic. That's part of the merchant agreement. I don't know if Square has changed that. They have a little bit here and there. Anyway, the take home, I have pointed these things out when there are real problems. I think they're kind of utilitarian, but for the most part, I'm expressing my frustrations for posterity so that the owner of the business will read it. Over the years, though, I've come to realize, and so in this case, I did actually have a conversation in person. I didn't lead anywhere. Over the years, especially my involvement with food trucks, mobile vendors, I would always tell people, if you have a problem, check out the problem, I'll solve it. No, those were wrong lyrics. The owner of this food truck is probably on the other side of this piece of sheet metal. They'll fix the problem. Don't go home and write a bad review. Go to the window, get it fixed. You'll probably get a better review you'll come out with a better review. You'll look good for being a positive person. You'll say, hey, you know, I had a problem and the owner fixed it and I'm happy now. And I'm writing a 5-star review for a place I was going to give 1 star because they pissed me off. But it turns out it was because I ordered wrong or whatever, right? So at the end of the day, we as consumers can sometimes be, we as consumers of reviews can sometimes be certain of motivation. We know that Marcus Brownlee or any number of professional reviewers are, being paid. They have advertisers. They disclose their potential conflicts of interest and so on. And they bank on their credibility and they're advocating for the customer. That's us. And they want their reviews to be correct. They will sometimes even make corrections after the fact. Like, hey, we got this part wrong. That's a sign of credibility. Owning up to an error, being transparent about like, ooh, we don't want to hurt the company by giving incorrect information. So these are things that help to fuel credibility and reputation. While other times we need to rely on the aggregate, since individual anecdotes do not have any more or less credibility than any other. So that's why you get that average 3.5 star rating, because some people want to knock off 2 stars for reasons unknown of an otherwise 5-star place. So we can hope overtly good and bad intent will cancel out. So we hope that a 5-star place has enough 5-star honest reviews. If they're really 5 stars, 4 and 5-star reviews are based on honesty. Hopefully the people that just give a 5-star review because they want to stroke the ego, they want to come across as a 5-star reviewer in general for whatever reason, they're a friend of the owner, whatever. Hopefully those offset the overtly negative, I'm knocking off 2 stars, or I'm going to give 3 stars because I was angry that day. And so hopefully those cancel and you end up with some sort of valid rate, no pun intended. And you can use that. That's hard to do, and we can only hope that that's true. So aggregating broadly can be a problem. Rotten Tomatoes is an interesting movie review platform if you've ever used it. I personally do not rely on it at all. I never look at the Rotten Tomatoes. It attempts to gather and present aggregate scores based on actual reviews and on the sentiment analysis of the world. So you get 2 scores, right? The reviewer and the comments or whatever they're called. Again, I don't really use Rotten Tomatoes because I think it's a dart at a dart, thrown at a dartboard, right? 2 darts. Rotten Tomatoes is often referred to in the movie biz. Oh, this movie with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98 is about to leave Netflix, right? So you got to see it. It's used as sort of a movie quality baseline. There are many, many references to the weakness in the Rotten Tomatoes scoring mechanisms, so you can read about those if you want. It's difficult to do what they're doing. They've achieved enough correlation between a general sense of a movie, like how many people want to see it, what their box office was like, what their streaming popularity is like, etc. There's enough correlation that it's trusted. But I think better ways could be done. So add some salt to your Rotten Tomatoes is what I have to say about that. The scoring mechanism, like I said, it could be kind of close enough for horseshoes. IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, presents professional reviews via links. So when you're looking for reviews, you'll see here's what this place said, here's what this place said. I think they even have the Roger Ebert site still on there. Rest in peace, Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert, who was known to give bad, like really scathing reviews sometimes. Those arguably did ruin movies. Yeah, that's what happens. But although he would sometimes come back around and say, you know what, I was wrong. That movie was really amazing. They present not only links to other professional reviewers, but they also provide a place for individuals to present their own reviews, including, I think you can mark it if you have spoilers, so you won't completely ruin a pre-watch experience. It is up to you to decide which of each of these to add to your own personal assessment, whether to watch the movie in question, perhaps whether you agree or disagree, etc. So as long as the data, the opinions, the inputs, the links, the articles, the reviews, as long as the data can be examined, I guess, maybe it's okay to aggregate if you can see what the aggregates are. But if it's just sort of averaged, like a Yelp 5-star review, and you have no idea why. Why did you take 2 stars? I took 2 stars off because I didn't like the way the front sign looked. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about the quality of the food. That's what I want to know. The real aggregate, though, the real aggregate of reviews is the market. If people buy, they like. And if they decide they don't like, and they tell their friends, eventually people don't buy. The professional review kind of front loads that and says, well, we checked it first and we're not going to buy. And then people who trust them will say, maybe I'm not going to buy either. So some percentage of those potential buyers who assign their trust to the reviewer will make a buying decision. Others will buy it anyway, and then they'll say, yeah, you were right. Others will buy it anyway and say, you were wrong. So it does have an impact, but probably the second order, and I've done no research on this specifically, but it would be sensible if the second order effect is, yeah, I bought the product, but I agree with the 25 reviews that said this one thing didn't work because that one thing did not work. So the second order effect is probably more measurable there, where their friends will say, oh, okay, I was thinking about buying it. I didn't read all the reviews you did. I'm just going on your opinion. Or I saw some influencers on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, and they said it was bad. So people construct their own risk assessment. The decision tree that they want to follow is probably pretty predictable. If you start seeing a ton of positivity in social media, but if you don't differentiate whether it's experiential influencer versus structured professional review, if objective and subjective are aligned, you don't care to delineate, then you may make a decision based on the noise and you'll get what you get. But the market will decide eventually. Good products will probably survive. If you give a really bad review to an Apple product, Apple's going to be around. If you give a really bad review to the Humane AI pin and they got nothing else coming, they're going to learn the hard way that you should release a product that is not overly aggressively innovative such that it leaves people saying, this doesn't really work. It's $800 plus, I think it's $24 a month. So keep version 1 doable. Listen to the words of Raymond Loewy, infamous product designer. Minimally advanced yet acceptable. I think I got that right. Maya, it means take what works. If you're going to surprise someone with technology, base it on something familiar. I'm paraphrasing. And if you're going to build something familiar, make it surprising. So the glass rectangle cell phone, what do we got to do? It's always, everybody has one, so we got to make it surprising. The AI pin or the Rabbit AI, which is a different product but similarly unusual. If you're going to surprise somebody with like, oh, you don't even have to type, you just talk. And it just comes up with answers based on AI and takes pictures and facial recognition. Like, that's a lot of stuff. I'm used to having my phone. Does it connect to my phone? It should connect to your phone. Make it an extension of a product you already have so that it's a surprise. Ooh, it does these cool things, but it works with the thing I'm super familiar with. So this is a lesson you learn from the market. You can take your cues from reviewers. And if you seed your popular reviewers that are intently and passionately focused on the segment of products that you are entering or playing in, you'll probably get a really honest review. And if you offer them stuff early with an embargo, so you can't talk about it until the launch day, but here, live on it for a month. Try it out. Give us a really good review. That's good for them. It's good for the company. Tell us what doesn't work and we'll try to fix it. Then you get into like they don't have any say over your review, but they want to be able to say, we're already fixing these problems. Right? There's a way to do it transparently so that there's no funny business, so that people say, oh, the net impact of this review being available early with feedback to the company is that their product is going to be better for me. So when I buy it, after listening to Marcus or anybody, it's going to be a better product. If you're transparent, that seems okay. That seems like a pretty good deal. A little bit about valid rate. It was one word, valid rate. Probably could have been 2 words. So here's the deal. Silicon Valley, around, like I said, around 2008. Based on some very, very poor reviews of a restaurant that had not even opened. My friends were opening a barbecue restaurant, which when it did open, it was great. And I'm not just saying that. People were coming to this place and saying, oh my goodness, I'm from Texas and this is good barbecue here in San Jose, California. So they were generally highly regarded. But they had not opened, and they received anecdotal, experiential reviews that people didn't like the parking lot, that wasn't even open. Came here at 6 p.m. and it wasn't even open. Right, because it hasn't opened yet. They're still doing the tenant improvements on the inside of the place. They're not open for business. They will be in like a month. So they had these 1-star reviews that would never go away, ever. So before they even opened, they got 1-star reviews. So we were like, there's got to be a way to do this. There's got to be a better way, right? A way to have valid rates, to rate things with valid reviews so that the outcomes, the indicators, the measurements have some sort of validity. The idea was to make subjective but focused micro reviews. Twitter was popular. So instead of writing a missive on Yelp that would go on as long as this episode of this podcast is right now, instead of writing a book, write 140 characters or something about one thing. The food was great. The host was annoying. The paint was not dry. The curtains are ugly, right? Just write one thing. Write about one thing. You can write 100 different things if you want, but keep them focused. Be specific. Now, you write the focused micro review or reviews. It could be individually scored. And we were using Bayesian inference. So you could determine how credible an individual reviewer and their individual micro review tended to be. The reviewer would tend to be reliable, offering valid ratings. An individual item could be variously credible, valid. And so that individual item, right, if you said, pick something that's fairly generic, the type on the menus was too small, but no one else says that. That might not be completely useful, not necessarily invalid, but also not something that should take down the whole restaurant. You're not going to knock off 3 stars because you couldn't read the menu, right? So if you're able to break down into individual micro reviews the different facets that different people will observe, right? The food is authentic. The food is inauthentic. The ingredients are fresh. The salad was wilting, right? You can actually get fairly specific. You can blow off some steam. Not really interested in whether it was your graduation. Do that on your blog. Take some pictures, put it on Instagram. But for valid rate, we want to know what was good, what was bad. Here's the rub. So you do your Bayesian analysis. You figure out which of the submitters. So you have a running like, oh, this person tends to be very objective in their review elements. Their micro review submissions tend to be specific and credible and objective. This other person tends to lash out, tends to be a troll, tends to be a jerk. So the value of their contributions could be adjusted over time. You would do this by how other people interact with them. So you do a little, this credibility comes from those people that are high credibility, etc. So sort of a page rank style, I suppose. And eventually, here's another key part of the puzzle. When things are fixed, when problems are addressed, or when things just age out, right? If you write a review for a restaurant that opened 10 years ago, and your review is still there, what good is that? First of all, the same owner might not even own the place. The same people might not even work there. Their menu may have changed. What did you review? Well, I wrote a story. Okay, well, that story's not even really true anymore. It's not interesting. So what is the value of maintaining that 1-star, 2-star review, or 5-star review? Does it have much weight in modernity? Probably not. So ultimately, the idea was to create valid ratings of initially restaurants and food, but eventually any retail and more from there, so that we could avoid rambling anecdotes that called out one bad experience, relying instead on aggregates per topic. That is, you could group by parsing and doing sentiment analysis on these short Twitter-sized, as I used to say, Twitter-sized pieces of text that are focused on a particular thing. So you could talk about personnel working, you could talk about the food, you could talk about the cleanliness of the establishment, You can talk about, hey, it wasn't open. Okay, well that one's not valid anymore because they are open. So as they aged, they would drop off. So you'd have like a Hamming window maybe. So you'd say, oh, as an item gets older, or as an item is new, a new item should not take down the whole restaurant either, because maybe it's just that one day, one bad thing happened. So the value should be based on the validity over time, and then that validity should automatically be reduced over a longer time, so that you don't have a shock, you don't have gaming, right? Like, let's all write bad reviews today. Okay, well, that's not going to take down the restaurant today. That will be fed into the analysis, and the overall score of the restaurant or the business will be figured based on history, based on Bayesian analysis of the submissions, etc. All these things, right? So a lot of thought went into this. We had a prototype. 2008 came along, so it was right in that window. The Great Recession, our seed investment fell through. That's how that story went. Still an idea on the table. I wouldn't use the name Validate again, but it could work. So what is modernity? What can we do? How can we take what works, try to diminish what does not? What do we do? We have the technology to accept anecdotal reviews and perform sentiment analysis on them, classifying and summarizing, thanks to LLM AI. And this is something that Amazon is doing. I think they're doing it on IMDb too. I just looked the other day in preparation for this, and I think I saw it on IMDb. But essentially, you are now able to scan over the reviews of 10 different people, come up with some commonalities. You can probably pull out the outliers. You can say, oh, this one's about food. This one, the French fries were bad. This one, so you can kind of correlate with menus and other things. So I think some really creative things could be done with existing anecdotal reviews, and you can actually pull out some classifications, and you can literally say, from this date, the comment was on the owner and the menu item, and the owner has changed, and that menu item is no longer available. So therefore, this review is less valuable. If you had a micro review approach, you could just remove the micro review that is no longer valid. See how that works? So you would say, oh, owner not there anymore. That entire micro review is invalidated. It's outright. There's no reason to scale it. It's just zero. No longer applies. As a consumer society, we should eventually come to expect a certain amount of objectivity, even from a subjective review, even if it is derived from language used, so that there is some subject. There is some sort of a baseline, some sort of a baseline that we can all sort of rally around. The 5 or 10 star rating system is not based on any consistent benchmark. So if you're going to give a restaurant a 3-star review, your 3 stars should be based on something specific. Some review sites will allow you now to say the food quality, the establishment, the staff, so you can break down the score. I know Amazon reviews allow that for different product types. That is something. However, those star ratings are still arbitrary, right? So if it's a restaurant, you should rate the food, the cleanliness, the service, I guess, right? Those are the things, but you should score them on specific things. Otherwise, the star rating has no meaning. So if we have a consistent benchmark that we can go by, and that could be driven by platforms, but there has to be some sort of social norms because people want to say what they want to say. But I think ultimately the ability to classify sentiment, anecdotes using large language model, artificial intelligence will come in handy. It's probably a whole startup idea right there. A clear distinction between the professional objective reviewers and their reviews and the anecdotal experiential reviews of amateurs. This is not to give too much credit to professionals or to diminish too much the effort of amateurs. But the fact is they are coming from different places. The motivation and inherent bias in the casual amateur influencer who wants to be paid per engagement, per mention, etc. They're not concerned with an overarching long-term reputation. Perhaps sometimes they are. I'm not speaking for everybody, but to the casual user, the casual consumer of reviews, it might be really easy to equate what TikTokers say, and we don't know how they're being compensated, versus someone who spends a lot of time on their reputation and their credibility and their transparency and their structure of their objective reviews. And to make those equal and equivalent is disingenuous towards the people that are really spending honest time versus people who are doing it for the money and the clout. The ability to differentiate those will be more and more important as more and more buying decisions, or more and more decisions in general, are made based on what other people have to say. The Net Promoter Score. So I'm closing out the final item in my notes. Must be clear that the person or the algorithm consuming the review must be clear which is which, right? What am I reading? Am I reading the professional structured insights of a person who is a subject matter expert of sorts when it comes to cameras or movies or ethnic foods or running shoes, right? Or am I just reading the anecdotal opinions of someone who may be compensated for their content based on how many views they get, right? So it pays to be sensational, to be overly positive or overly negative, etc. This is a transactional, anecdotal, experiential impression that you are consuming. You can't really set that next to directly a professional structured review that's more objective. But you have to know which is which. You have to know what you are consuming when you're constructing this personal assessment, if you do. It must be clear to the algorithm, especially if you're going to just start consuming these and maybe aggregating them and summarizing them, so that there is a context and a weight applied appropriately to these inputs, especially if we can eventually aggregate, like I said, Rotten Tomatoes style across arbitrary items, whether they are products, services, places, people, creative works, and so on. So if I was going to, first of all, I think valid rate is a better idea now than it was. And I'm going to do an episode tomorrow of Cafe Genius Impresarios about the press company that I am starting, or that it's already been going. It's already a startup. But reviews of things could very easily be a component of this platform. That's the whole nature of it, which I will talk about at the Impresarios audio program, episode 61. If you're on the prowl, if you go to buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, you'll look for the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. You'll find out where that is on Spotify or elsewhere. And when we eventually launch the podcast's primary point of publication on the cafegenius.org website, coming soon to a website server near you, you should be able to find that the valid rate concept, not as I've described it here. Obviously, there have been great advances in the use of artificial intelligence and natural language parsing on the development of sentiment analysis plus. So we can actually factor out different sentiments on different elements of a missive. But I do like the micro review idea. I think that would be really interesting to reattack today. So I'm gonna put a pin in that. And we'll see if I want to include it in tomorrow. I may point back from that episode to this one. But at the end of the day, if more and more buying decisions, and by the way, I don't even want to get into this, but the next time people become ill around the world and people decide, some people, different people, decide to give their reviews on different solutions, different methodologies, different prophylactic measures, different treatments, different therapies, etc., etc., etc. It's exactly the same problem. It's just not quite as dire an outcome. Hopefully, you're not going to have the same results if you choose unwisely where you get your pizza tomorrow, which running shoes you purchase, whether you do consume the $800 Humane AI pin or not, right? So there are some important considerations in general about how we value, how we evaluate, but in general, how we value the incoming signals, the information that we consume, and how we use it to make decisions. I think it is a topic that will continue to become more and more critical as more and more people are using phones. The Gen Z crowd may be turning the tables and may actually be moving away from blindly accepting such inputs. If they're really going back to flip phones, that might be something to actually look at for real. But at the end of the day, we really need to consider what we are consuming from the internets and from sources outside of our own heads. And reviews of things are everywhere, of dubious value sometimes. And we need to be aware of that and make it better. And that's where we will leave it today. Don't forget, Cafe Genius Impresarios, episode 61 will be about a media startup that I'm in the early days of, but in the midst of. And you heard it here first. I think Validate should make a reappearance, the phoenix return, arising from its ashes from 2008-ish, when the Great Recession put an end to our very early days. So maybe that can make a comeback. And we'll see where things go. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo, coffee.com, for where to find Impresarios, this program, Quaggling Sand, Let's Innovate for Vegas, and a myriad of other things coming down the pipe. Thank you for listening.